year is 1914. War has been declared. France has been defeated. England, Italy and America are holding back against the German Empire. Australia are fighting the Turks at Gallipoli, while the Arabs are fighting for their own independence. And this is the bloodiest war the world has ever seen. It's horrible to imagine what those poor people experienced when they were stuck on the battlefield.
Okay, that's enough of that before I get sued. Before I get into the video, I want to say thank you for all the support on my last video. While I was making it, I was expecting to get like 60 views max, and I think we got a bit more than that. I also want to offer my sincerest apology to the guy that was upset that an opinion piece video contained opinions. You're right, the opinion video about opinions on Siege definitely shouldn't have had any opinions in it, that's my bad. I've always had a soft spot for historical games, and while I'm more partial to World War II, this game does so much right, it makes me sad that I never really played it during its life cycle. The Great War was one of the largest and most influential wars, one so horrendous that people couldn't imagine a conflict being worse. The first mission is a prologue that I think sets the scene of the game really well. You start off as a soldier with a randomized name, which is a weird choice for your one-man army of a character, as you and your team hold against a German offensive. Okay, so he did actually die, but at least we've got a land ship, an indestructible hunk of metal, weighing almost as much as your mother. Armed with a cannon firing 6-pound shells, enemy machine guns and bunkers are no longer a threat to your troops, and Lewis guns are perfect for dealing with the standard infantry. It's honestly pretty unfair for the enemy forces because there's not much you can do against a tank. Jokes aside, this mission highlights how insane the war was, killing anyone and everyone, mentally breaking those that hadn't died yet, and the pain of fallen soldiers being lost to time, forgotten, to never be identified. Starting the game off this way is sort of sobering to the realities of the experiences you're about to have. For the most part, you're just one part of a team, one cog in a machine of death and destruction. This theme's continued pretty well in the first chapter mainly follows Daniel Edwards, a volunteer for the Tank Corps and driver of the Mark V tank Black Bess, but the player technically also controls the rest of the tank crew as a cohesive unit. In the Second Battle of Cambrai. As a side note, I'll probably pronounce some French place names wrong, but that's because their language is gross and I have no respect for it. From a historical position, it kind of feels like both battles of Cambrai have been conflated in this mission, but I'll admit that I haven't slept in a couple days, so I might just be misreading it. That's a whole lot of words and I'm too tired to understand what they mean. The mission starts slowly to get the player used to the mechanics. The only threat is static field guns facing head-on to the thickest part of your tank's armour, so they're not a true threat, they're just to teach the player to stay moving and to get used to judging the main cannon's bullet trajectory. The first real threat comes on your third capture point, in the form of German Sturmpanzer, wielding weapons that rival yours and armour specifically designed to cause shots to ricochet off. This is the first time death and failure have been a concern as the Germans display their tenacity. After failing to hold against the British offensive, the Central Powers shell the previously contested areas with artillery fire. However, that doesn't stop the advance, and the Allied forces drive straight into an ambush. Being stuck in mud and surrounded by enemy forces, the only option the crew has left is to release a messenger pigeon with coordinates for Allied artillery to target, deciding to sacrifice themselves and their equipment rather than let their enemies get their hands on them. After a pretty action-packed sequence, you play as the Bird, flying over a ruinous hellscape that's almost unrecognisable as the beautiful town and fields you just claimed. This could have been a massive mistake by taking the player out of the action, but as you fly, nothing but the melancholic silence, the players left to stew in their own thoughts. This was a town, people used to live here, and now it's nothing but bricks, mud and viscera. The second mission of the chapter leads into occupied sections of the forest, contrasting the natural beauty with the perversion laden with intent to kill. I'm not going to cover every single beat of every mission, because if I did, this video would be like 5 hours long, but the first chapter is a great character story that I cannot recommend enough for people to play. Where the first chapter was easing the player in for story with a bit of action, the second chapter feels like it focuses more on action than on story. That's not to say that either are bad. Following Clyde Blackburn, a cheater, liar and manipulator, the experience is less about the personification of the determination and sacrifices made, and more about the fact that history is written by the victors. We don't have to know if the characters in the story survived, or even existed at all. The only thing that matters is whether we take the fantastical story at face value, or we choose to doubt the possible truth we're being told because it sounds too far-fetched. Full disclosure, I'm terrible at flying using mouse and keyboard, and my sensitivity is way too low for it, so you're not going to see any amazing flying here. Test flying a new design of plane, the virgin snow of the French mountains, unaware of the carnage that's about to rain upon them. Nothing else seems to matter. Although I guess a bunch of enemy planes intent on killing you should probably go higher on that priorities list. Being the kind of person that likes the current number of holes in their body, and the promise made to the tail gunner that you'd get him back in one piece, the player is forced to protect themselves, and once the enemy start retreating, the characters follow the lone survivor, discovering a massive munition store. In the aftermath of a battle and the destruction of German logistics, Blackburn's plane gets damaged and crashes into no man's land, leaving the player stuck behind enemy lines in German-occupied France. In my opinion, this is the first mission where you really get to see the raw beauty of the graphics and the stunning visuals under the light of a full moon unmarred by fog or swampy mud. Which is ironic considering the overall setting and the horrors of no man's land. After finding Wilson alive but injured, Blackburn is bound by his promise to help him to the Allied trenches, walking past burning husks and stepping over the buried remains of what used to be someone's child. The shell-shocked troops were dead as soon as they stepped out of the trenches, if not in body then surely in mind. The oxymoronic beauty of the war-torn country, the fact that your only chance at salvation lies on the other side of MG nests, ready to mow you down in a horrible case of mistaken identity. There's plenty more to be said about the campaign of Battlefield 1, but the story's better experienced than be told by some random person that can't do it the justice it deserves. Although I'm leaving the campaign there, we still have to talk about... After loading into my first match, I was in awe of the visuals, the sound design, everything the player could experience at that moment was perfect for me. As I barely played the multiplayer during its life cycle, I asked my friend to also buy the game and try it out, and we both feel that underneath everything is a great game, but it's got some weird design choices and unfortunate bugs. Most of the time, if we try and play, we just get queued into empty servers, and with no kind of bot support, two people on the same team just aren't going to be able to play. That more or less funnels you into the server browser, which is a great thing to have, but it's hard to tell if you're going into a server with custom game rules if it's not in the name of the server, or if you're not the party leader because then you never even get to see the server you're going into. Loading into the game for the first time, you're greeted with a choice of 4 classes to play, each class only having 1 weapon unlocked unless you fork over more money for the deluxe edition. Having only 1 weapon per class and no sort of cross-class progression is a situation that I was lucky enough to not fall into, but for my friend it's caused a lot of frustration and confusion, as he feels like his only choice is to play medic and revive people to level up quicker, or scout for high damage in the hopes of killing the enemy before they're a threat to him. Needing to level up in order to unlock other potentially better weapons had a noticeable negative impact on his enjoyment of the game, which is a real shame because I really love this multiplayer. The cheating problem that was plaguing most of, if not all, Battlefield games has been resolved, or the cheaters got bored of the game and moved on to others, but that leaves people that are passionate about the game regardless of its age. As a high level player in other games, I'm used to looking around the screen for any possible hazards, which actually works really well in this game, as you're more invested in your surroundings, and you get to take in more of this amazing art design. I don't think I've had a single moment in at least 8 hours of playing where I've been confused about where I am in the map, because despite looking the same, every area is still distinct enough to not confuse the players. Having planes trying to bomb you, tanks trying to blow you up, and soldiers trying to kill you, the situation can get very hectic while still being enjoyable. Planes aren't too much of a bother for your average infantryman, but tanks are in this weird spot for me. Because tanks were new to the battlefield in World War I, the soldiers would be terrified of this death machine, and nothing but a well-placed grenade seemed to have any effect. With how deadly and difficult tanks can be to face, you still get to experience a bit of what the real soldiers feared, without the worry of having your body disassembled like a Lego person. Tanks are slightly frustrating to go against, but that's somewhat because nobody seems to care to play anti-armor. Having the class system set up like this, and the freedom to change class whenever you want, is great because it avoids the milsim problem of only being able to have 2 snipers per team or something dumb like that, but it also opens up to the potential of everyone running snipers. A game needs to balance its classes, so there's reason to pick, say, a support class or medic, instead of just focusing on kills. On the other hand, it avoids the situation Battlefield 2042 fell into, where you could have any weapon on any class and just have snipers that can resupply themselves, which takes away from the team dynamic. Overall, I think this game is great. It has its pitfalls and it's not as alive and active as it should be, but this is definitely a game you should get on sale if you can. I record my videos in insane quality, 4K 120 FPS at something like 60 megabits per second. That's way more than anyone needs to do, but I take pride in my work and want things to be the best quality I can produce. And while playing and recording, my FPS never dipped below 180. This game is so stunningly beautiful, while also maxing out 240 FPS when I'm not recording. Hey there, thanks for watching this through. I'm still learning and want to be able to improve my skills and content, so if you have any advice, feel free to share it. I'll take anything constructive to heart because I want to make content people want to watch. This video was originally going to cover the entire game, but I wanted to ease in with something a little bit easier to make and watch, and when I'm ready, I'll come back to the campaign of the game. That won't be for a while though, because I've got a couple ideas already set, and I think they'll be better than remaking a video. I'd also like to give a shout out to my friend. They provided all the music for the video, and I've linked their socials in the comments.